Hi, I'm ZelRazel and welcome to our story. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're new here, hi, I'm ZelRazel, your Filipino mom doing reaction videos online. And I also do live stream every Mondays to Fridays, 9:30 p.m. Philippine time. If you see this thumbnail, ako na yan, ready to chat with you. Today, ipagpapatuloy natin ang part 2 of this lawsuit series about dun sa McDonald's hot coffee churvalu interview. It's from Kendall Ray, the truth about the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit. If you haven't watched our part 1, I do suggest to go to that video first. I'll be linking it down below para po mabuo ninyo yung buong story. So, wala na pa tumpik-tumpik. Umpisa na natin to.
So the jury ended up talking about what percentage of fault should really be given to Stella here. And they agreed that some percentage of the fault should be given to her because she did spill the coffee. It's not like someone bumped into her or a car hit her or anything. She spilled the coffee on herself. But they decided that McDonald's was definitely at fault here too, and a lot more so than Stella was. And before the jury came to their decision, they actually found out that McDonald's wasn't planning to do anything about this. They weren't going to redesign their coffee cup or get better lids, lower the temperature, nothing. Stella's doctor also testified during the trial, and it was very powerful. They said that Stella's burns were some of the worst that they had ever seen in their career.
The photos depicted where they had to graft the skin from the side of her legs to close the third-degree burn. And I think if people would have seen the severity of the burns, they would have realized it was not a laughing matter.
The trial finally came to an end on August 17th, 1994, after 7 days of testimony. And the jury ended up finding that both parties were at fault here. They decided that Stella was at 20% fault because she did, spill the coffee on herself, but that McDonald's was at 80% of fault because they knew that this was happening and they did nothing to fix the problem for a long time.
We talked about different percentages of how much was her fault versus, how much was McDonald's, and we finally came to assign 20% fault to Mrs. Liebeck because she had initially spilled the coffee. And we assigned 80% of the blame to McDonald's because they had a very long history of people being injured, and they were so adamant that it was such a trivial thing that they weren't going to bother to do anything other than just continue to rake in the money on their coffee sales. And the fact that it was their own records really damned McDonald's as far as I was concerned, because it was very obvious that they knew there was a problem and they were ignoring it completely, just totally disregarding the consumer safety.
The jury felt like the warning on the cup was not going to be enough, and it was not going to do anything to protect future consumers. At the end of everything, Stella was awarded $200,000 for her medical costs and other expenses, including just her pain and suffering. But then her compensation was reduced by 20% because she was 20% at fault, so she ended up getting $160,000. However, she was awarded $2.7 million in punitive damages, which is the equivalent of 2 days' worth of coffee revenue for McDonald's.
We looked at the coffee sales on a daily basis, and we figured about 2 days worth of coffee sales. We thought that that was, a fair amount, and punitive damages we assessed at $2.7 million.
Only way you can get the attention of a big company would be to make punitive damages against them, and this was a very small punitive damage, we thought.
Now, punitive damages are to hold the company accountable. It's basically a punishment for McDonald's as an incentive to get them to change their harmful policies. However, a judge did reduce their punitive damages from $2.7 million to $480,000.
I'm going to reduce the punitive damages award to $480,000.
We'd rather not talk about it at this time. Give us time to think. and I will talk to you later.
And Stella and McDonald's both appealed that decision actually in December of 1994. And after their negotiations, they settled outside of court for an undisclosed amount, so we will never know how much they ended up paying her. But as part of the settlement, Stella was not allowed to talk to the media at all about her case. And of course, this trial made headlines all over the world. It was talked about by reporters, journalists, news outlets, of course, like late night shows, daytime talk shows.
Man, it's hot. How hot is it? It's so hot, I poured McDonald's coffee in my lap to cool off.
Pardon me. Excuse us.
I kind of got pushed and it spilled on me.
Was there a top on it?
Yeah.
Did you put the top on, or did they put the top on for you?
They put the top on.
And they made the top. You didn't make the top, did you?
We got a chance?
Do we have a chance? You get me one coffee drinker on that jury, you gonna walk out of there a rich man.
Now she claims she broke her nose on the sneeze guard at the Sizzler, bending over looking at the chickpeas. So...
Ooh, my coffee was too hot. It's coffee!
Plasma getting bigger, Jesus getting smaller. Spill a cup of coffee, make $1 million.
I sued Starbucks because I spilled a Frappuccino in my lap and it was cold. I'm gonna sue! Yes, I'm gonna sue!
And over time, they kept reporting less and less of the details accurately. And that's why a lot of people don't know the truth about this case and think that Stella is some type of scammer. The media did a great job of making Stella's case look like a complete joke.
It seems she was holding a cup between her legs while driving.
Clamped it between her legs, drove down the street, spilled it, burned herself, sued McDonald's, and collected.
And they spread so much false information about her and the case as a whole. And people really didn't have much sympathy for Stella at all. In fact, it seemed like people felt bad for McDonald's.
I mean, it's not like the McDonald's person leaned over the car and poured it. It was an accident.
It wasn't long before there were so many rumors about her, so many just blatant lies about her. People started writing her these horrible, horrible letters, death threats. And at some point along the way, the narrative became that Stella was driving while trying to drink coffee and then spilled it all over herself. Basically that she was irresponsible in this situation and she deserved what was coming to her.
Stella has received letters saying stuff like,
I was driving down the road. I had no business driving down the road with coffee between my legs and all that stuff. They're just plain ignorant.
My mother was made the villain in this story. It's like bullying. It feels like bullying.
And of course, no one was reporting about how bad Stella's injuries actually were. Most people didn't realize that Stella had almost died from spilling this coffee on her legs. People seem to believe either one of two versions of events. Either they thought that Stella purposely spilled the coffee on herself, or they believed that she was reckless while driving and holding the coffee. And pretty much everyone was under the impression that she had superficial burns at most.
I mean, it seems frivolous. It seems like it should have been common sense that if you spilt hot coffee on yourself, like, that was your own fault.
I think she won her case and won a lot of money.
The summary of that story to me is tying up the court system for a bunch of nonsense. Damn, that's pretty bad. McDonald's should have some of the liability because it was their product.
Yeah.
It was their product that hurt somebody.
Ooh, that's a hell of a hot cup of coffee.
Oh my God, that's so bad. That's so bad. I guess now that when you know how hot it was, it seems less frivolous.
People assumed that she was just trying to get a ton of money from McDonald's, not just get coverage for her medical bills, which at first, that's all she wanted. And now this sweet old woman who had these horrific injuries was being depicted as this greedy bitch, basically. To a lot of people, she was a con artist, just trying to take advantage of the system. And for some reason, a lot of stories on Stella's case actually repeated that she made $2.9 million at the end of the lawsuit, which is completely false. And it was reported several different times.
A woman was awarded $2.9 million in a lawsuit against McDonald's. She spilled hot coffee on her lap while sitting in her car and claimed it was too hot. Every day we hear about another outrageous lawsuit. Who pays? You do. Tell the legislature we can't afford another $1 million cup of coffee.
And the whole conversation around Stella's case ended up being kind of used as propaganda and a catalyst to completely change the American judicial system. And it all started with the term frivolous lawsuits, basically meaning lawsuits where people were making money from corporations, sometimes doing things to themselves on purpose in order to fight a case and get a bunch of money. In fact, Stella's case may actually be where this term really came from. And of course, corporations really latched onto it, as well as insurance companies, medical companies, companies that get sued a lot. They were hoping to take this whole conversation around frivolous lawsuits, which even George W. Bush was talking about it a lot at the time, and they were hoping they could kind of use it to their advantage, maybe get something in place to stop some of these lawsuits. Of course, these corporations want to avoid as much liability as they possibly can when it comes to the consumer. Tons of people were talking about Sel's case and just raking her over the coals, and surprisingly, McDonald's came out as the victim in the whole situation. People literally sympathized with a corporation that makes $1.3 million on coffee sales alone. ABC News even called Stella the poster child of excessive lawsuits. And of course, the media never talked about the 700 other people who had been burned by McDonald's coffee in the last 10 years. So this led to a lot of discussion about tort reform in the US. Again, a tort is a wrongful act that causes injury or harm or infringes on a person's rights and leads to civil legal liability. So tort reform activists are normally people with a lot of money who want to limit the individual people's rights to file lawsuits against corporations, businesses, and medical practitioners. Stella's case is still used as an example in court all the time. It's still taught in law classes. It ended up being a really important lawsuit, and she potentially could have saved a lot of people from being burned as badly as she was. But that is it for the McDonald's coffee lawsuit.
If you have any suggestions of new reaction videos na gusto ninyong gawin ko, please do comment it down below. And malay nyo, yung masasuggest ninyo ang susunod kong re-reactan. If you enjoyed this video, please do give me a big thumbs up. And click the subscribe button. Join the family. ZelRazel family. At sa tingin nyo, tama ba nagdemanda si Lola, si Stella, against McDonald's? Masyado ba talagang mainit ang kape ng McDonald's? Personal experience, I did had a burn experience with McDonald's. I specifically remember that. Pero ang in-order ko back then was a hot chocolate from McDonald's. This was way back pa, mga grade school pa lang ako, di ba? Kaya doon ako na-trauma, doon sa experience ko, na hanggang ngayon, naalala ko pa, na napaso ako ng hot chocolate ng McDonald's. We're going to Baguio, and then we had a stopover sa McDonald's. So we had our orders take out para dire-diretso na papuntang Baguio. While I was drinking my hot coffee, baka mo, sobrang init, it burned my tummy. I couldn't even eat dahil sobrang napaso yung dila ko. And the whole vacation, wala, hindi ako makakain. Di ba part of vacation is mukbang galore, ganyan? Hindi nakamukbang galore ang host ninyo. Dahil nga paso yung dila. That's about 1 week na hindi na makakain ng matino. Anyways, it's a lesson to be learned by big companies, by us, the consumers, and hopefully wala nang mapaso sa ating lahat, no? Ayan na. That's it, guys. Like and share. I'll see you all on our next reaction videos. Bye! Woo!